Hello yogis, welcome to the mat. Well, I've been getting some requests for some shorter classes. People keep saying, I don't know what's wrong with me, I'm so busy, I should be able to do an hour, I'm just, And it is funny, isn't it, that we have so much going on and yet we feel like we should have less. But that's the way it is, and I'm hearing it from a lot of people, so if you're feeling that way, you are not alone. So today is going to be a little shorter, what I think of as kind of WD-40ing up your body. Our body takes on a lot of stresses with either repetitive, like say sitting a lot, or repetitive doing. If you're doing a lot of yard work or whatever it is that's keeping you busy, cycling and outdoor sports, what have you, what I want us to notice is that our body takes on stress, even in our hands, our ankles, and so on. So today's kind of a WD-40 for your body. We'll do a lot of warming up and specific range of motion stuff that can help balance out the joints from those repetitive stresses. So I hope it feels great. Obviously, really pay attention if you know you've got a shoulder or a knee or something that has a history. Be very thoughtful as you're approaching things that might make that part upset, right? And make sure to make adjustments. All right, so we're just gonna start standing. And so when you're ready, please get your feet a little wider than your hips so you just feel really solid, really stable. And then we're gonna take our arms and sweep them up and let them come down. And sweep them up and let them come down. And as we do this, I invite you to add breath. Inhaling up and either through the mouth or through the nose, your preference. And as you continue, start taking the arms a little bit further back and down. No again, big force, just taking them a little bit further back than they've maybe been so far today. Notice if one side's different. Last one. And then I'm going to invite you to take your fingers and intertwine them for Yoga Mudra, palms facing each other. Shoulder heads rotate down. Reminder that if this is hard, if you can't kind of get those shoulders back and down, then go ahead and take a strap or a scarf or whatever you might have handy, a sock, and try and get that motion. Again, if this hurts or pulls on the joint, don't do it, but it should feel like a good stretch mostly through the chest and ribs. And we're going to expand that. Take a nice long inhale. Give it room. Exhaling, press the fists off the hips. Nice, again. One more time. Marvelous. And then we're going to release the arms and just kind of rotate those shoulders. Anytime you feel inspired to add something organic, something I'm not describing exactly or whatever, go for it. And now we're going to do a little crossing. So it's kind of like thread the needle step standing. So I'm going to take my right arm and sweep it kind of behind me and then across. Inhaling back, exhaling across. So I'm doing kind of a rapid sort of athletic breath here. And then I'm going to hold it crossed with the shoulder down and take my left hand and placing it right at about the elbow to draw the arm in. If you're higher than that, you're not going to get the stretch that we're looking for. You can add even a little more intensity by taking your right hand and kind of pushing away from you. So it's just going to straighten the arm a little more. Breathing into that. The breath stretch is unlike anything else we can get. So every time we can bring deepened inhale to the shape, we're ahead of the game. Lovely, and let it go. And again, any little organic movements for recovery. Inhaling, sweep the left arm behind, and you might follow it with your head, getting that nice range of motion in the neck. Most of our body is designed to do so much more in terms of range of motion than what we do throughout our most days of our life. And so we just get stiff and our range of motion becomes smaller, but it doesn't have to. And crossing, hold, shoulder head down, big inhale. And pressing towards your body. And then take your left hand and kind of push away a little bit instead of bending the arm. So I'm feeling this a lot right around the kind of head of the shoulder, deltoid, and so on. You might be feeling it elsewhere. And I'm going to invite you to add attention to see if you can bring your breath right in behind that left shoulder blade. Wonderful. And then let it go. And again, any range of motion, recovery. I'm going to roll out my wrists. Ideally, we would do a lot of these things before we decide to go weed the garden or add compost or whatever we might be up to. We get the synovial fluid going in the joints. Then we're going to take our hands in prayer. So I'm going to draw the palms down. So you may need to start up here, and you may never get to that kind of straight line of the forearms. That's okay. Don't hunch the shoulders. Nice big breath in. Good, and then bring the palms, the root of the hands away, if you will, while you're kind of stretching the hands, the fingers, kind of by pressing in. And then release them, and I say pretend you're playing piano badly. Just give them a nice wiggle. Then I'm going to do a reverse prayer. So in this, our fingertips are pointed down with our palms together. But again, with a lot of people, they'll kind of shrug the shoulders to accomplish that. Instead, anchor them down. Bring the hands together kind of down by the navel, and then slide the prayer hands up until you've got a good stretch going. And most of us will feel this kind of in that underside of the forearm and right up into the kind of side of the forearm. Again, these are areas that take on a lot of stress when we're doing a lot of gripping and so on. And come on out. Nice work. All right, we're going to step towards the front of the mat if you aren't already, feet parallel. And I'm going to ask you to first just come onto the ball of one foot and then the other. And while you're doing this, you're kind of pushing your shin bone forward. And you can even kind of do it a little bit fast if you want and play with that. And then we're going to turn the foot under. So taking the toes, bringing them back. So you're kind of pressing now the front of the foot a little towards the mat or towards the wall in front of you. Oh, I love that stretch. I can often feel it up into my shin, for sure into the top of the foot, the ankle. You always want to do this with like a yoga mat or something padded under your foot, but this is something you can do in your house while you're just standing around having a conversation or what have you. Then let's roll those ankles out. All right. And now feet again, parallel mountain stance. We're going to bend the knees and just do a little circle. A little circle one way, a little circle the other. Again, noticing if you've got some crunchy bits. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing with the hips. And there's no goal here. You know, we're not trying to get into a biggest circle possible. It's more that we're just trying to warm all the joints and again, kind of a range of motion, a path of motion that isn't perhaps what they were in today so far, or maybe even all week. I often ask people to think, you know, in say the entire last 3 to 4 days, have you had your feet wider than your hips at any point? And a lot of times people are like, oh my God, no. All right, so now we're going to do forward and back, standing hip pump as I call it. So you're bringing your butt back behind you and then you're squeezing the glutes forward while keeping the head neutral. So this is not a lifting of the head at all. And I'm going to take it deeper into a little squat. Go down as far as your knees are comfortable and then come on up, squeeze forward. And if you'd like, add the arms reaching back or drawing back as if you're pulling on something heavy. So this is a nice way to really work the muscles of the upper back, kind of like we do when we're in our jet airplane or if you were pulling on a TheraBand. If you've got one at home, it'd be fun to get that back out again as a way to really strengthen that upper back. And that's what helps balance out the tight front from hunching and kind of being seated too much or focused on things in front of us too much. One more. Marvelous. Inhaling, root and reach up. And now if you'd like, send the heart upward. If that bothers the neck, again, keep that head neutral. Exhaling, bend the knees and fold into your ragdoll. Now if this is uncomfortable for your back,
Go ahead and add elbows onto the thighs. I have often started out my yoga practice this way in the morning, especially if I had a really physical day the day before and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tight. I'll start with my elbows here, and then gradually I can feel the muscles letting go, responding to gravity. And you can give your head a little yes shake, a little no shake. Deep, deep breath. So often we start our practice, just laying still, coming into breath. We're doing it here in a more active way today, but I invite you to use some of those same tools of watching the breath, asking, is there more? Adding your ujjayi throat contraction if you enjoy that. And you might sweep the area around your feet. And as I do this, I'm noticing stretching kind of up into the IT band area and hamstrings. It feels really good, again, necessary. And as you're ready, on an inhale to come up, always drop the butt, stack the spine. Big glute squeeze forward and prayer hands. Nice pause. You might close the eyes, turn your gaze up in towards that third eye point. Light connection to the tip of the tongue. And just scan your body. Notice what you're feeling so far. Do you feel a little zingy in places? Some of the parts of your body, muscles and joints waking up. Okay, I'm going to do an active neck stretch. I know a lot of people are wishing they could get more body work and massage and things than they are. So first I'm going to have you take your right hand to the right side of the head. And I'm just going to have you push your head towards your hand. Your hand is resisting. And then release. And push. And release. One more. And release. Good. Let's do the other side. Left hand. Again, shoulder heads anchoring down. Push. And release. And push. And release. And you might already notice if the sides are different. Like on one side I can feel it a little more under my shoulder blade when I'm doing the pushing part of the action. And release. Good. Then we're going to take the left hand up and over onto the right side of the head and just encourage a stretch down this right side. I'm not, just reefing on my head. I'm kind of just drawing with the weight of my hand a little bit to provide that just right amount of stretch. And breathing to invite release. And you can use the hand to support the head coming back up so those muscles don't have to tighten up again. Taking the left hand up and over to right hand up and over to the left side of the head and drawing down to the right. And you can make little adjustments too if you kind of tilt your chin forward and down or kind of up and back like a little bit of a nod. You'll notice that shifts where the stretch is happening. And breathing into this, really close your eyes if you don't need them open for balance. And try to direct the breath to the area of tension, telling it it's okay to release here. And again, use that right hand to press the head back up to neutral. And then I'd like you to just do what I think of as kind of rolling a little top, circling a top, if you will, letting your head kind of move on its axis, no big or fast movements. And my hope is that it feels a little smoother, a little more well-oiled perhaps than what it has. All right, we're going to come on down to the back for our bridge pose work. And just a note that one of the key things, I often don't get to show you this standing because we're already laying down, that we're trying to create when we're in bridge pose and we're powering down through the upper arm in particular. Maybe you're using the whole arm against the floor. But what I'm trying to achieve is a space right here between the shoulder blades that's like a little valley. And that keeps the cervical spine from getting pressed into the floor. That's really important for the health of our spine and discs and vertebrae and all that jazz. So you want to make sure that you start your posture for bridge, of course, with your feet parallel right under the knees, but with the shoulder blades kind of underneath you so that when I push down with my arms, I can feel that there's a spaciousness for the spine. Try to find neutral with the head, looking at the ceiling. Drawing a long inhale. Exhaling, press the hips up. Inhaling, come slowly down. The slower you go, the better. That really works the hamstrings and the glutes. Exhaling, press up. Inhaling down. Do one more just like that. And this last exhale, press up, and we will hold. Now first, make sure that you're engaging your inner thighs, almost like as if you had a block or something there. And then see if you can walk your upper arms a little more underneath you. And powerfully pressing the chest up towards the chin, the glutes towards the sky. If you'd like to add that same yoga mudra position that we did standing, please do. You're going to press the pinkies towards the floor and the fists towards the heels. One more big breath, sending the knees away from you, the heart up and back, and notice where breath stretches you. And release the hands, then the arms come slowly, slowly down. Nice knees to belly. A little rocking side to side here. And one of my favorite movements is to go into straddle. So to take those legs out into a wide V, but then to play with one leg at a time. So I'm gonna either clasp the bending leg with my hand at the ankle or the blade, or you can just grip the knee if you want to. It kind of just depends on what's comfortable. I've got my other hand under the straightening leg for just a little kind of guidance and support as I try to really straighten that leg. So it's just one deep hamstring stretch, maybe calf stretch at a time. And again, adding anything organic. You know, what happens if you point and flex your foot here, you roll your ankle? Oh, it's amazing. And again, it's like a massage that you're giving yourself, and you get to be in a state of noticing, you know, if one side needs more time, give it that. We don't have to do it the same amount on each side. And then bringing those heels together for butterfly. And the invitation to just either hold here and breathe, or to add a little sit-up motion and what I think of as a little windshield wiper. You're bringing one foot towards your nose and then the other. And release. We're going to press up to bridge one more time. This time we're going to just keep the hands right on the hip bones for our leg extensions, but I still want the shoulder blades underneath me. So take time for that. Ever so slowly straighten one leg forward. Nice breath. See if you can keep the hip bones stable or get them stable if you dropped one. Other side. Again, if this is too much, you can always just lift one heel, one foot, I should say, off the floor, kind of hovering rather than extending the leg. This is one of the best poses. If we do it daily, in fact, it really changes how our body handles stress of hard work or sitting still, both of which create their own stresses. And this pose is wonderful for the body. And come on down, knees to belly. So I'm going to take us into a very kind of relaxed spinal twist, if you will. If you like doing a more active spinal twist, a single leg down or eagle legs or anything else, you're welcome to do that. But I'm going to come into embryo pose on my side body. And you know, if it's too far to the floor for your head, you can tuck a cushion or something under there, or even your block. Otherwise, for me, I'm going to just scooch my left shoulder. I'm on my left side, and I'm going to scooch my left shoulder just a little to the left, and that brings me a little more kind of onto my shoulder blade, and then it's not so far from my head. And then I'm going to take the right arm and slowly reach behind. And if it feels better, if you want to just come back and open again, you can. Otherwise, at some point, inviting you to be here, knees straight forward of the hips, feet flexed for stability. To just be here and let breath work its magic. Notice it moving into the torso and kind of demanding space. You can also play with that back arm, moving it up by the ear and then straight out behind you again. And I'm going to add one more option here, which is to rotate your right hand all the way kind of forward and down, so that I'm trying to rotate my shoulder head forward in the joint, trying to bring my thumb towards the floor. And then I'm going to rotate the other way, trying to bring my pinky as far rotating back as I can. And we can just notice that each of these offer a stretch, into the arm, the shoulder in their own way. You might feel it in your bicep tendon if you're somebody who's quite tight through there. One little add-on option, you might take that top leg and straighten it. When I do that, I like having my left hand as a little bit of both a support, but also then to kind of add a little bit of encouragement for a deeper stretch. So I'm kind of trying to bring my foot closer to my left ear. And bend the knee before trying to come back to center. And scooch onto your other side. So again, you're on your right side, knees straight forward to the hips, feet flexed. And if you're wanting to get less of that kind of distance to the floor for your head, scooch your right shoulder further towards the right edge of the mat. Then rotating open into your twist with that left arm. And again, you might play with a little movement of the back arm, just finding that best place of stretch. And then deep focus. Where does the breath demand space in the torso? What I find is if I'm really dedicated to breath and I get a big inhale, it brings my back arm off the floor, and the exhale sinks it again. So the breath is creating that movement by filling the breath space and then emptying. And then as you're ready, making that rotation with the arm. So I'm going to forward rotate my left arm, kind of trying to work the thumb towards the floor. It doesn't matter how far it gets. That's just the direction we're going. Nice deep breath, arm is straight. And then I'm going to rotate the other way as if I'm trying to bring my pinky back behind me. Again, the more you can straighten through the arm, the better. A lot of us will feel some tingling, for example, into the tricep and some of those other areas that were really tight. All right, and as you're ready, come on back. Beautiful. We're going to do a little bit of yoga sit-ups, as I think of them. They're different than the sit-ups, that most of us did in gym class. But I want to do them because they are a great way to help us really make sure that we're using this core body correctly. And that will reduce the stress on all the other joints and the spine and so on. So that when we're being physical, we want that power to come right from here. So I'm going to have you start with your feet flat right underneath the knees. And first, just your hands on your lower abdomen. And basically, we're going to be doing compression and expansion breath, which we've done many of my classes. So most of you will have experienced it before. I want you to take a nice long inhale, slow, deep, and wide. Really fill the space under your hands. On the exhale, draw the abdomen towards the spine, and I'd like you also to contract your perineum at the same time. So it's as if you're trying to cut off a flow of urine, is the best way I can explain it. And inhaling, relax, deep breath. Exhaling, belly to spine, contract perineum, and you should feel kind of the pelvis tilting upward as you're powering down through the low abdomen in particular. You can use the upper muscles as well, but that's our main emphasis, is that low belly. These are the muscles that actually support the low spine, where most people feel, pain or weakness. Another long breath in. Exhaling, compression, belly to spine, perineum or pelvic floor, pelvis tilting up, hold. And I sometimes like to poke these muscles and say, hey, you, I'm talking to you, contract. Emptying, emptying. Good, release. One more long inhale. Exhale, belly to spine, etc. Now bring the hands behind the head and see if you can hold this basic lower belly engagement while you're, of course, continuing to breathe. And when you're ready, we're going to add our sit-up, but it's going to be on the exhale, and I want you to see if you can play a little mind game with yourself here, if you can get your torso to lift off the floor, not because you're hauling it off the floor, but because you're powering down so much through the abdominal muscles that it brings you up. So gathering a long inhale. Is there more? Is there more? Exhaling, lower belly to spine, feel the pelvis tilt, and then the rest of the belly drawing down until it creates that wanted effect. If you're not getting off the floor, don't worry about it, don't force it. Keep talking to these muscles, telling them to draw down. Emptying, is there more? Can you draw down a little more and get one more vertebrae off the floor? And inhaling slowly, release. Nice long breath in. Exhaling. Yoga sit-up, belly to spine, soft tongue, soft gaze. Good, let's just do a couple more. Always taking your breath timing to lead you, not mine. Last one. Nice work. Bring the knees to the belly. So if your neck is getting tight when you're doing that, number one, it may be that you're kind of pulling on the neck, which we don't want to do. My arms are there, my hands are there, just supporting like a web or a net, kind of catching the head. And if that is all too much, you still can't get the neck to relax, then I would just do compression and expansion breathing. The head's on the floor, and you're just doing that powerful engagement, is there more, and releasing. All right. Come on up with me, please, onto hands and knees. So table pose allows us to move into cow-cat, which is one of the best sort of lubricants for the spine for sure. We want intelligent hands, middle finger straight forward, other fingers spread wide, right under the shoulders. And on the inhale, cow pose, I'm tilting the tailbone back, drawing the heart forward, and observing the breath, asking, is there more? Exhaling, tuck the tailbone first and let that take you into your cat back. Again, inhaling, tailbone tilts back, heart draws forward. Notice any stretches. Exhaling, rounding into cat. Here you should also feel the really good strength of that core you were just working. One more time, just like this. And hold, please, in your cat back. And I want to ask you to kind of take your ribs to the right and to the left. And I'm hoping this will create a really good stretch through the side body for you. And then returning to what I call your stable table. I'm going to turn sideways here so that you can see more what we're going to be doing. So we're going to do a little range of motion with the hips by taking the leg and just circling it, all right? Calling it kind of like a fire hydrant pose, which we're going to add in a moment. So as I'm doing my circling, I don't ideally want to be kind of crunching through the arm and so on. I want to be pretty stable. That's also going to require me to use some core strength. So notice if your body's kind of collapsing and instead use your core. And then circle the knee the other way. Doesn't matter how high you get. We just want to enjoy the range of motion. Other side. First one way. And then the other. And again, notice what happens in your body on each side. If one side's stiffer, got some interesting twinges, or it just feels really good on that side, and release. Good. Now we're going to come into fire hydrant. And so for this pose, I'm going to be lifting the one knee at a time, and I'm just going to be holding it. Now again, most of us will instinctively lean or bend. I want you to see if you can keep both elbows straight, shoulder heads powering down towards your hips. Take one more big inhale. It doesn't matter how high your leg is, but try to push off with the floor leg as if you're trying to launch that flying leg, and see if it gets higher. And release. So it's interesting, if we just try to lift the leg, I've got the left leg up now, it's harder work than if I try to push off with the floor knee. It's kind of fascinating. A little mind game, little body game. Shoulder heads anchored, elbows straight, neck soft. One more deep breath, push off, launch that left leg, hiya, and release. Nice. Go ahead and bring the toes together, knees wide, child's pose. This is one of the best poses for our body. Again, just really helping get a nice stretch through the low back and hips that we don't often get. If this pose doesn't work for your knees, then you might find instead that you can get some similar effect kind of coming into a little bit of a forward fold squat like so. So that would be a good alternate. Taking some nice deep breath into that low back, into the belly. And if we get the deep breath, you might even feel it come all the way up into the upper back. And that's a great sign that you didn't just go with short, shallow breath. I'm going to ask you to come up by tucking the tailbone so that it's really not the effort of the hands or the arms. Bring the knees back under the hips, although we might decide to start our puppy stretch with the hips a little behind the knees so that as I come forward into one of the best shoulder stretches, I don't have a lot of stress in the shoulders. I've kind of got my weight shifted back through the butt. And then if I want to scooch forward a little bit at a time, I can. Now if you're trying to go into this pose and you're like, I just can't get my head to the floor, which is where we'd like it because we want that ease in the neck, then you might take a block and place it under the forehead and be here. See if you can let your legs relax, your tongue, your eyebrows. And let's take one or two more breaths here, letting the breath really lift and sink the chest. And when you come up again, please tuck the tailbone and then walk those arms back in. We're coming to our belly for jet airplane. If you would like to simply come into a little plank and chaturanga to get there, go for it. I'm not really emphasizing dog series much today, but you can always toss that in. All right, resting on your forehead, fingertips touching the floor, shoulder heads anchoring down the back. And this is kind of like what I was talking about when we were doing that pulling back with the standing hip pump. You should feel the effort between the shoulder blades. So if our shoulder heads are just on the floor, I'm not going to feel that. I need to rotate them up and back and kind of down, like I'm trying to put them into my back pockets. Good. Take a nice deep breath, pelvis anchoring, use those glutes. And when you're ready, first just reach the hands off the floor towards the wall behind you. Good. Next breath, extend the spine. See if you can comfortably get the chest off the floor. And again, if you can't, just keep talking to this whole back body. A lot of us, those muscles get so used to being kind of stretched and allowing us to hunch forward that they don't remember how to contract and shorten like so. And you can come all the way out and come back in. Otherwise, if you're holding the pose, make sure the breath is kind of pulsing it, that you're not frozen in space. And some of you might enjoy adding the feet for a full-on flight. Again, if so, you're reaching for the wall behind you. And if you happen to lift, great. One more. And release. Turn your head to the side. Sighing breaths are a marvelous way to just move tension out of our body and being. They tell us I'm well, I'm whole, I'm safe. And as your body releases some of the stored tensions, some of the imbalances, it really does send a wonderful message of health and healing. All right, we're going to do one last little strengthening pose. So those yoga sit-ups were a great way to kind of wake stuff up. And so is forearm plank. And this is one that I find
almost everybody can do without bothering their body, without it bothering wrists or low back or what have you. If low back is a sensitive place, then keep your knees on the floor. I've got my hands just one fist and then the other one wrapped around it is what's comfortable for me. Shoulder heads anchored, and I'm simply going to tuck my tailbone, and that'll bring me up into this forearm plank. And ideally, you do not want like the tailbone tilted up. You want it tucked. That's what's going to give you that core strength that we were using in our sit-up motion too. All that low abdominal. If you want to come onto the feet, just curl the toes under and press the heels back. Press the thigh bones towards the sky. And very importantly, imagine that you're squeezing something between your thighs. Because if your heels rotate out away from one another, it will make you feel very weak. All of a sudden, it'll usually hurt your back. Breathing here. I hope you're wiggling, kind of quivering a little bit. That's great. Breathe into it. Soft gaze, maybe a smile. One more. And release. Now, if you're craving more of those, you go for it. Otherwise, we're going to close the kind of physical part of the practice by pressing back to downward facing dog. So I'm going to plant my hands, curl the toes under, and then raise the hips up and back. And just pedaling the feet in downward dog, again, is a marvelous way to get into that back body, calves and hamstrings, or you can hear I'm actually getting my feet and ankles to kind of crack and release. Feels really, really good. You can do that same stretch we did standing where you come onto the top of the foot. Otherwise, hold with me here if you can for just a couple more breaths. Shoulder heads rotating away from the ears and towards the back pockets. Belly drawing into the back. Head is liberated. No neck effort. One more breath. And then slowly walk the hands back to the feet. Forward fold, ragdoll, back of the mat. And again, you can kind of sweep the area around if you'd like. Inhale, root and rise. And I lied, I forgot one of the more important poses that I wanted to end with actually is our straddle. So I was referencing that taking your feet outside of their forward path of motion. And so here we are. This is one of the best things you can, again, bust out while you're, hanging out with somebody, having a conversation. You've got your feet wide, they're parallel, and you're just using them really pushing into the earth, powerful, gripping like little tree frogs to send your hips one way and then the other. And then eventually, if you can, going low. And this should take you into some nice inner thigh groin stretch. You can always add kind of a side body stretch by taking both hands towards one foot and then the other. And then bringing those feet back in so you can comfortably release up. Exhaling, prayer hands. So just take a moment and notice, close your eyes, scan the body, and notice, first of all, what you're experiencing overall. And again, I hope it's sort of an enlivenment, more freedom, but also do notice if there are any areas that are speaking to you and saying, wow, I'm really sore or something's really out of balance here. It's one of the greatest gifts, I think, of coming to the mat and doing our practice is it gives us a chance to observe what's happening in the body, and then we can help it so that we're less likely to get injured when we go to do a thing. So lastly, for our recovery, we're going to grab our block. We're going to come on down to our back, and we're going to lift the hips and take the block up under the pelvis. So I want to be right at the pelvic triangle. That's the bony triangle at the top of the crack of the butt, basically. And I can stay with just my knees bent like this. If this feels good, I'm getting some nice decompression in the low spine. Remember, you don't want the block in your low back. You want it right under the pelvis itself. And then I've also got the option of extending the legs. Now, if I do that, my pelvis kind of dumps or tilts forward, then I'm going to move the block a little bit down so that it's just right at the kind of pivotal, kind of fulcrum, if you will. And this offers a wonderful stretch into the psoas and hip flexors. Again, if you're sitting a lot
or doing a lot of crouching work, this area will really welcome this stretch. And the more you can deep breathe into the stretch, the better. You'll really deliver that massage to where it needs it most. We stay here only as long as it feels great. So if you start to feel, tension building, something kind of going into protection, then you're going to want to come off of the block right away. So please notice what feels appropriate to you in this moment. If you have not been in stillness very much, just laying down and really absorbing what we just did would be marvelous. If you're like, hey, you know what, that felt great, I don't really feel like meditating or shavasana, I'm going to head off and do a thing with my newly WD40 body. I'm going to close our practice with the bowl and 3 ohms. And I'm going to wish you well on all your adventures. And I encourage you to notice what we did here today that felt just the most useful to your body. With the idea that you're not going to get to the yoga mat necessarily every day, but there's a lot that you can be doing every day that supports your body and what you're asking of it in life off the yoga mat. So notice what those things are. Maybe write yourself a post-it note, put it on the coffee maker, whatever it takes to remind you to do a few of those things. Thank you again so much for getting to the mat with me. If you'd like to join me in ohms, please do. Have fun noticing the vibration that they create in your body. Gathering a long inhale. Om Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace. Namaste.